You know that feeling when you realize your parents aren't actually superheroes and they're just regular people winging it and completely terrified? Because for me, that realization didn't happen gradually. It happened all at once on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when I was 14. Growing up in Ohio, my mom, Elena, was a force of nature and the absolute bedrock of our lives. My dad had walked out when I was just a toddler, and honestly, I barely noticed his absence because mom filled every single corner of our world. She ran a small independent graphic design business from our dining room table, managed my chaotic little league schedule, and somehow always had a hot home-cooked dinner ready by 6. She was always laughing and possessed this infectious booming laugh that could pull you out of the deepest funk. If we couldn't afford brand new sneakers, she'd turn shopping at the local thrift store into a high-stakes epic treasure hunt. And if the car broke down on the way to Cedar Point, it wasn't a disaster. It was just an unexpected camping adventure on the side of the interstate. I genuinely thought she was bulletproof and had this endless magical reservoir of joy and stability. Then came 8th grade, which was the year of the Great Recession. Though I didn't know the phrase back then, all I knew was that some of my friends were suddenly moving away because their parents lost their jobs, but at our house everything seemed totally normal. Mom still laughed, still packed my lunches with little sticky note jokes, and still told me we were doing just fine. Until that Tuesday, I came home early from baseball practice because the field got flooded and the front door was unlocked, which was weird, and the house was dead silent, with no music playing and no sound of her typing away at her computer. I walked up the stairs to look for her, and noticed the door to our small pull-down attic was cracked open, so I poked my head up expecting to find her hunting for old photo albums or Christmas decorations. Instead, I saw my mom sitting on a dusty old trunk, surrounded by stacks of unpaid bills and final notice letters, and her shoulders were shaking so hard she couldn't even catch her breath while holding her head in her hands, completely crushed by the weight of trying to keep our world afloat. I froze on the ladder and my chest tightened up like watching a movie screen rip right down the middle, because in that single quiet moment I saw the truth that she wasn't a superhero, but just a tired, shattered woman, desperately pretending to be strong so that I wouldn't have to be afraid. I wanted to climb up there and hug her and tell her it was okay, but then I caught sight of her face as she wiped her eyes, looked at her watch, and literally started deep breathing to calm herself down, because she was getting her game face on and preparing to come downstairs to be the joyful, untouchable mom I expected. I realized that if I let her know I saw her break, it would break her even more, because it would mean her shield had failed. So I quietly backed down the ladder, slipped out the front door, waited 5 minutes on the porch in the rain, and then slammed the door loudly as I came back in, yelling, "Hey mom, I'm home!" When she came downstairs a minute later, her eyes were a little red, but she had that bright smile plastered on, and asked how practice was. And for the first time in my life, I lied to her, smiled back and said it was great. Mom, everything's perfect. 10 years passed, and I grew up, went to college, and got a steady job in Chicago, while Mom's business eventually stabilized, and those lean, terrifying years became a distant memory. But we never, ever talked about that day in the attic because the facade stayed up as an unspoken agreement between us to protect the story of her strength, until last Thanksgiving, when I was visiting her back home, and we were sitting in the living room nursing 2 mugs of cider, and watching the fire crackle in a house that felt warm, safe, and full out of nowhere. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small framed piece of paper and handed it to her. She unfolded the crude, colorful drawing I had made when I was 15, right after that rainy Tuesday, which showed a house where underneath the foundation I had sketched a tiny figure holding the entire building up on her back, while smiling through the strain, and underneath I had written to the strongest person I know, "You don't have to carry it alone anymore. I see you."